So, what do we think happened to us as a result of doing that? Okay. According to the evidence on the effect of nature on human beings, simply to look at pictures of nature, just that has a profound effect on us. Our anxiety and anger will have reduced. Our heart rates and blood pressure will have dropped. The muscular tension in our faces will or should have reduced. So, just a bit of intro. My interest nowadays, beyond treatment, is prevention of disease and managing disease through lifestyle. I feel that that is at the absolute heart of our medicine. When we open the Bible of Chinese medicine, the Yellow Emperor's Classic, we start on page 1, chapter 1, page 1. Most books lay out their stall right at the beginning of the book. It's a discussion between Qibo and the emperor, and Qibo is asking, how come it used to be in the old days, people lived to be 100 and were still hale and hearty and healthy, and nowadays they're decrepit by the age of 50. And Qibo replies, it's because they don't know how to live. Huh? They don't keep an ordered life, they don't follow yin-yang, they drink too much, they go to bed at any time, they rush after profit, and don't keep a calm center, and so on. Plus ça change, as they say. This is really interesting historically in medicine because this is old. This is 2,000 years ago. So what we find actually running through the Emperor's Classic is a very advanced idea that disease is not due to curses. It's not due to offending the gods. It's due to rational causes, and the most important of those is lifestyle. Well, the most important cause that we can do anything about is lifestyle. And if you pay attention to, if you read The Guardian, for example, that great bearer of constant bad news, I read The Guardian for breakfast every day to remind myself that the world is not all like Brighton. There's lots of bad news coming our way as far as the global health situation is concerned. People are living longer all over the world, and yet the rates of chronic disease, cancer, cardiovascular disease, strokes, depression, diabetes, and so on, are increasing at a terrifying rate. And if they continue to increase at the rate they are going now, in 20 years' time, everywhere in the world, they'll be unmanageable, because the biggest increase now is in developing countries. As Western lifestyles spread, the highest rises in diabetes and those other diseases are occurring there. I mean, we can already see what's happening to the health service in our own country, the strain on it. I didn't mention dementia. That's another massive threat. So there is only one, unless somebody comes up with a magic bullet. I think we've probably exhausted the medical magic bullets now. Unless somebody comes up with something astonishing, there's only one real future for medicine, and that's preventative medicine. And I feel that the Chinese tradition, the Yang Sheng Nourishment of Life tradition, holds wisdom that is valuable to the world to help understand the causes of disease and understand how to prevent it. So we can divide the causes of disease, and we can divide if we look at our prospects for a healthy and long life, we can see three main factors. The first is constitution, the second is luck, and the third is lifestyle. So the Chinese tradition from about certainly from about the 3rd century BC, understood the genetic factor in health, longevity, and disease. It didn't know what it was. It called it qi, inherited qi. Some people inherit strong qi, some people inherit weak qi. Those who inherit strong qi will have a strong body, stamina, strong libido, need less sleep, don't get ill so frequently, can go out and party night after night and get up in the morning and carry on, those kind of things. That's an extremely strong inherited qi. Those who have weak inherited qi have a weaker body, poor stamina, less robust, sick more often, and so on. We all know this. And this is determined primarily by the parents, the coming together of the parents. It's genetic. But one really valuable thing that Chinese medicine added to the mix and wasn't really understood in Western medicine until the 1980s is that this genetic inheritance is significantly affected by what happens during pregnancy. That a mother's lifestyle during pregnancy can significantly affect the lifetime health and longevity of the child. The particularly important factors in early pregnancy are emotions. So in the first 3 or 4 months, if the mother suffers shock, extreme stress, that can have lifetime impact on a child's health, physical and emotional. Severe shortage of food later in pregnancy can affect it also. So that's our constitution, and we can't do anything about our fundamental constitution. We receive, as you know, an amount of inherited gene which will get used up. And when it gets used up, we die. But what Chinese medicine pointed out in its very sophisticated way is understood is that there's another kind of gene essence which is post-heaven. And this comes from our daily life. So we are nourished. As living creatures, we receive nourishment. So where do we receive nourishment from? That's a question. You can answer if you like. Sing out answers. Food. Air. Singing, did you say? You're obviously a singer. Qigong, sleep. Sorry? Some kinds of exercise nourish. We'll come back to that, actually. And doing things that make you feel good, meditation. And particularly important for today's discussion is connection with nature. We're nourished by nature, by art, by music, rich nourishment. And if we absorb this nourishment and we don't waste the value, the qi that we receive, we don't drive ourselves, exhaust ourselves, deplete ourselves through stress, through work, through whatever, then we supplement inherited gene by acquired gene. And that explains why lifestyle can increase our chances of living a long and healthy life. Simple. What about luck? So luck is another very important factor. It's something I like to emphasize, really, because I think when I first got into New Age thinking and macrobiotics and then Chinese medicine, I kind of started off thinking that what happens to us as far as our health is concerned is all our own responsibility. If I get sick, it's my fault. If you get sick, it's your fault. Okay? That's very naive and very dangerous. Luck plays a really important role. If you get born in one part of Glasgow, you'll live 10 years shorter than if you're born 1 kilometre away. If you get born in Kensington, Chelsea, Kensington and Chelsea, you'll lose a year of life expectancy every tube stop you go out from the centre. Well, I don't know how many tube stops there are. Not infinitely, for about 10 years, 10 stops, and so on. So what kind of bad luck can impact on our health? That's a question. Interaction.
Accidents.
Sorry?
Accidents.
Accidents. Yeah. Road traffic accidents. Yeah. Poverty. Poverty is massive, absolutely massive effect. Environmental impacts, toxins, poisons, bad water, bad air. And I'm not talking about, well, no, yeah, I am. Yeah. People, how many people die in this country now? They reckon from air pollution every year, 10,000, 20,000. Sorry? Disability? Well, maybe, yeah, it might shorten life. Lack of love. Lack of love when we're, particularly in babies, lack of touch, lack of holding, nourishment, lack of nourishment and connection. So these are things that are not in our own control, and constitution is not in our own control. So luck is the second major factor. We can't do anything about our inherited constitution, and we probably can't do anything about we certainly can't do anything about our past luck, but we can do quite a lot with behavior and lifestyle, and that's the subject of Yang Sheng. So Yang Sheng literally means to nurture or to nourish life. And we know that it goes back about 2,500 years, roughly. The idea is mentioned in Zhuangzi. I think, do you know Zhuangzi, the Taoist book? We can't really say writer, but supposedly credit to the author Zhuangzi. He talks in, I think it's the 4th century BCE, about people who do bear walking and crane movements in order to extend life. He mocks them, by the way. He makes fun of them. Yeah. To Zhuangzi, life and death are the same. It's a lower pursuit to try and extend your life and so on. So Yang Sheng comes from many different sources. Perhaps the most important is the Taoist, but also there's an influence from the Confucian and Buddhist traditions, and from Chinese medicine, and from folk medicine. Folk medicine, otherwise dismissed often as old wives' tales. That great repository of human experience and wisdom that we pass on generation after generation, and is a rich source of knowledge. It's not all right, but it contains. Just as an example, when many, many years ago, when I was going through that stage in my life when people were having babies and my wife was having babies, I noticed that when somebody had a baby, I have to say it was among the women, two questions were boy or a girl, and then what? Sorry? Weight. And I go, look, come on, weight? Why? Why are you so interested in weight? And perhaps they didn't know why they were so interested in weight. But baby weight is one of the most significant predictors of lifetime health. Babies are born underweight, pretty guaranteed they're going to lead a shorter life with more disease. That's folk wisdom. Western medicine utterly rejected that until 1985. That's only one of, we could all quote examples of folk wisdom. So when it comes to nourishment of life, I've already mentioned nourishment. One yin-yang paradigm, I don't like that word, but anyway, we'll use that we need to manage is the relationship between nourishment and movement. We get nourished by positive emotion, breathing, meditation, loving sex and touch, food, sleep, art, poetry, music, nature, and so on. Right? Is anybody, any herbalists here? Anybody does herbs? So, what's the downside of too much nourishment? Stagnation. Yeah. When you take yin nourishing herbs, they're sticky, they're rich, and if you take them too much or inappropriately, you get stagnation. What's the equivalent in food?
Dairy.
Sorry?
Dairy.
Well, even wider than dairy. Rich food. Rich food is more nourishing than simple plain food. Huh? And we need nourishment, and we all need some rich food. More or less depending on our activity. We need more rich food if we're teenagers growing, if we're pregnant, if we're doing manual labour, lots of physical training. We live in very cold climates. The Inuit eat traditionally 80% of their diet is fat. Up the cold Alps, they eat loads of dairy. So, a lot more rich food is appropriate to certain environments and times of life. But for most of us, too much rich food creates stagnation. We get phlegm, we get all kinds of stagnation. So nourishment is yin, and we need to balance it with free flow, movement. Yes? So what promotes free flow and movement? That's the question. Exercise, particularly stronger exercise, stronger type of exercise. Huh? Qigong can promote free flow, but be a bit careful. People are stagnant and depressed. Probably don't get them to do half an hour of that, moving. Well, movement, yeah, strong movement. What else? So I forgot emotions for a start, the strong emotions, joy, laughter, assertiveness, risky speech, when you say something that you're not sure whether you should say or not, and you say it, that frees up your chi, courage, movement, exercise, sex, tea, and alcohol. So that's just something to bear in mind. A theme, if you like, for the day is the balance between nourishment and movement. So coming back to Yang Sheng in general, what are the tools that we use to cultivate well-being, health, increase our chances of avoiding disease and having a long, healthy life? What are the tools? Well, there's an image of a chair there, and this is something I was told many years ago. Chair has 4 legs, nice and stable. Huh? Take away one leg, becomes more rocky. Take away 2 legs, and so on. Okay. So the 4 principal legs of Yang Sheng, cultivation of the mind, number 1. Yes? Why particularly cultivation of the mind? Can you think of any really overwhelming reasons why this should be predominant? I bring up one above all others, actually, is unless we are reasonably integrated with ourselves, our minds, and our emotions, we can't take care of ourselves. We just simply aren't able. Sun Tzu Miao, the great 7th century master of Chinese medicine, said the reason people don't live out their full potential in life is because they don't love and cherish themselves. We need to love ourselves to look after ourselves. It seems such a simple thing. How many people here make health resolutions that somehow they don't quite manage to keep? Oh, nobody. Oh, that's... Okay, even us, we're informed, we know about health and sickness, we tell ourselves we're going to make this dietary change or we're going to exercise every day or whatever. So often we fail, people fail, and that's simply down to not really cherishing ourselves. We're conflicted internally, and that's a big discussion, how we can change that. No time now. Second, of course, is diet, regulation of diet, eating well, drinking well, and so on. Tea and alcohol again. The third is cultivation of the body and the body energy with the right kind of exercise, appropriate levels of work and appropriate levels of rest. And the fourth is sleep. Sleep, so often sort of forgotten almost. Possibly some people say sleep is the secret of health. Sleep well and everything else follows. What else? Sexual life, very important in Chinese medicine. Behavior during pregnancy, childbirth, and postpartum, I mentioned. A particular part of Yangcheng is how do you care for babies, how do you raise babies. Management of old age, and the subject of this talk that I'm eventually going to get onto after this long preamble is connection with nature, art, and music. So we wouldn't say that nature is, the dominant part of Yangcheng, but it's one of the, do you understand what I mean when I talk about one of the balls we have to juggle and keep in the air? I don't know if you look at your life like that. I do quite a lot. I think, am I managing my mind and emotions well? Am I cultivating friendships? Have I made enough space in my life for friendship? Have I made enough space in my life for exercise? Have I made enough space in my life for nature, for art, and so on? So these are kind of, think of them as balls. And it's very easy when life's busy that we forget about some of the really important ones. So I'm here to argue that nature, our connection with nature, is an absolutely vital one of those balls. Okay. So nature is a source of nourishment, of inspiration, of joy, of health. This is a modern Taoist declaration of the Chinese Taoist Ecological Association. People who have a profound insight into the mysteries of the relationship between humans and nature are friends of nature and derive their understanding of longevity from nature by meditative observation and gazing. That by looking on nature, we can extend our lifespan and improve our health. But let's get it out of the way before we go on to accentuating the positive. We must remember nature is also a source of harm. It's a source of harm through the external causes of disease. Yes? Cold, wind, damp, dryness, heat, and fire. Why has this been so strongly emphasized in Chinese medicine? So I quote in my book, if you've read about what's called the mini ice age, I think it was in the 16th century, in England, when the River Thames froze over thick, solid, all winter. They used to have fairs and shops on the Thames. Imagine what it was like living in a hut with perhaps no windows, just wooden shutters, and a smoky peat fire that probably predated coal significantly. So this was very real, and it still is. A quarter of our DNA changes in response to the seasons. In Europe, in winter, our levels of inflammatory gene expression increase, and in a similar way they do in Gambia in the rainy season. So our human organism still adapts very significantly to the changes of the season. Just a few bits of interesting research. When they get people to stick their feet in cold water, they catch colds. This shouldn't happen, not according to Western medicine. And I once played above my pay grade supervising somebody's PhD in Norway. His PhD was on the use of acupuncture and repetitive cystitis. in women. And the other supervisor was a Norwegian researcher who was curious as to whether cold and wet influence cystitis, as Chinese medicine says. So he decided to do a study, and after a very short time, the ethics committee stepped in and said, you've got to stop doing this study, because every woman who was prone to cystitis, or the great majority of them, who put their feet in cold water got an attack. So there are lots of examples still of the influence of natural conditions on our health. And as we've seen so dramatically recently, typhoons, earthquakes, floods, climate change. This joint report by the Lancet and University College London says climate change presents very serious and catastrophic effects for human health and human survival. And one of them is this. So what's this a sign of? Malaria and Zika, dengue. Yeah? These diseases are all moving north. So it's quite likely in 10, 20 years we'll have malaria in the UK. So you know all this. Let's just have another quick look to finish up the harms of nature, how we should behave to look after ourselves. Don't sit on damp surfaces, especially women, for the reasons I mentioned. Change our clothes if we get wet. Avoid cold when the pores are open, so after a bath or after a shower or after being in the swimming pool and so on. Particularly obviously for women, avoiding cold drinks and cold on the abdomen during menstruation and after childbirth. When I was in the gynecology department in Nanjing Hospital, they considered 80% of dysmenorrhea to be due to cold attacking the abdomen. Very important, don't live in damp housing and avoid excessively cold food and drink, or getting cold on the abdomen if you suffer from epigastric or abdominal pain. And this Chinese advice, wrap up in spring, stay cool in autumn. Yeah, those girls do look funny, don't they? So, anybody know the English equivalent of this? That's even more ethnic than I was going to say. I was going to say ne'er cast a clout. You said cast an air a clout to may be out. And what do you think May means? Okay, because some people say it's the Mayflower till it blossoms. Okay, so this is a really interesting idea. It means now, exactly at this time of year, don't rush into winter clothing. Harden the body. Yeah? Allow yourself to become accustomed a bit to the cold. Yeah? And then you'll fare better in the winter. But in the spring, be careful. Or as famous Dr. John Chen said, very be careful. Huh? It's, I don't know if you've encountered this when traveling. I remember in Morocco, in the spring, the day is warm. Westerners, starved of sun after European winter, rip their clothes off and lie in the sun. And the Moroccans are sitting in the shade in great thick jalabas, thinking they're mad. Yeah? Because that's the time. So we see it every year, actually. People first sunny day, take clothes off. Typical thing is they go and work in the garden. Yeah? They go and dig in the garden, shirt off, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Pathogenic cold wind hits. It's still only March, might be a warm day. They get crippled with back pain. So I used to see it so many times in the clinic. So now the positive, everything, 16th century text, everything from ruler, master, husband, wife, and friends, to mountains, rivers, spiritual beings, birds, animals, plants, should be truly loved in order to realize my humanity that forms one body with them. And then my character will be completely manifested, and I will really form one body with heaven, earth, and the myriad things. Okay? So compare this to Genesis. Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion over nature and over every living thing that moves over the earth. And Paracelsus, do you know Paracelsus? No. God did not create the planets and stars with the intention they should dominate man, but they, like other creatures, should obey and serve him. So we have I got into trouble recently for using the term Judeo-Christian, but I don't know any other biblical tradition in Western culture that puts the idea that humans are the pinnacle of creation and therefore they have rights over the natural world. And we've seen where that's got us. We've seen the terrible destruction we are wreaking on the fabric of life through this idea. The Taoist idea, which very much influences the Yang-Sheng tradition, places humans in the heart, mingled, seamlessly integrated in the natural world, neither superior nor inferior. And nature is a place of belonging. And being in nature is a source of health and well-being. Okay. So it's interesting, why does nature affect us so positively? Have you heard of the diving reflex? Does anybody know the diving? Okay. The diving reflex is something that all mammals have, including humans, which is when we put our faces in water, some kind of receptors, and I think it's in the nose, trigger all these physiological responses instantly in the body. The heart rate slows down, breathing slows down, there's some other things that happen. So when we go into water, we seemingly click into our very ancient ancestral past as creatures who came out of water. That's why you can hold your breath much longer underwater than you can now. If you were to try it now, most of us would manage about 40 seconds. If we went in water, we'd probably increase that by 50%. So I think the same thing happens in nature. Humans and pre-humans lived constantly in nature. So when we walk outside and we open our eyes and we see these trees and we walk amongst them, this host of genetically determined, evolutionarily determined physiological changes happen in the body. I just want to introduce you to this word, this idea I find that also explains the effect of nature on it. This is a Taoist word, ziran. Difficult to translate, but it means self-so or spontaneous. So, this is a human construction. It's been designed by humans. It's been created by humans. It's got flat sides, flat surfaces, and so on. This is not ziran. We are all ziran. Each one of us has spontaneously manifested as ourselves. We're all different. We share common characteristics, but we're all different. There is no designer. Ziran means everything has designed itself naturally. Every tree out there is ziran. It's spontaneously come into being. And because we are ziran, we have spontaneously come into being with your yellow hair and your, no, those lips, that's not ziran, is that? That's makeup. We are also spontaneously, naturally self-creating. Not even self-created. The Tao has spewed us forth. So when we, ziran, go into ziran environments, we become well, we become weller, we become healthy, we're at home. I'm not knocking human design. You know, I love good architecture and human constructs, but we'll see that when we live in this world, we suffer. When we live exclusively in this world, we suffer. Do you know what desire paths are? Desire paths are where people design parks and spaces, urban spaces usually, and they think, okay, we're going to want people to walk along here, and then people go, no, we're going to walk along there. That's called a desire path. Yeah? And look how, this is Zaran. Yeah? This is a kind of, it's just spontaneously self-created. This is not Zaran. Yeah? This is constructed. So let's look at a bit of the evidence. This was a very famous study, the first study done on the effect of nature on people's recovery from surgery. So they looked at the case records of people in a hospital following gallbladder surgery, where some of the patients were in a ward that looked out on a brick wall, and the other patients were in a ward that looked out on trees. And they found that the people recovering from surgery in the ward that looked out on trees were discharged one day earlier and used fewer and less powerful analgesics. And so there's been quite a lot of research on the effects of nature since. Just 10 minutes being in nature improves our mental function, our attention, concentration, and self-discipline are better. Children who can see nature from their home, that means could just be a tree or a piece of grass, have better cognitive function. They're more able to control their emotions, better able to deal with stressful events compared to those who can only see urban environments. If we live within 1 kilometre of green space, we find there's less disease, particularly cardiovascular, musculoskeletal, respiratory, neurological, and digestive disease, and people have better physical and mental health. Just 10% more green space, for example, private and public gardens, forests, parks, agricultural land, means that people's health status puts them 5 years younger than people who don't have that connection. I don't know if you've heard of this, Shinrin Yoku. This is something that's taken off a lot in Japan. They take usually elderly people for mindful walking through the forest. That means walking silently through the forest, simply observing. And just out of interest, how does nature impact on our senses? Which senses are impacted by nature? Smell, that's very powerful, isn't it? Smell. Sight. Hearing, birds. Isn't it beautiful? I don't know. I've just noticed recently. I don't know why, but maybe, you know, like now it's warm and it's not really cold out there. Well, if I go out there now, I'll feel the cold on my body and it'll feel absolutely lovely. So touch, sight, obviously. One more, taste. I don't mean we go around licking trees, but although don't knock it. But yeah, we eat the fruits of nature constantly. So we absorb nature through our 5 senses. Mindful strolling through the woods, smelling, seeing, hearing, lowers cortisol, that's the stress hormone, pulse rate, blood pressure, and sympathetic nervous system activity. So by contrast to all these beneficial effects of nature, people who grow up in urban environments, non-Zaran environments, unless you count this bit of grass, suffer from increased aggression, crime rates go up, rates of schizophrenia, anxiety and depression increase. If you put a plant in your clinic, it will have an effect on lowering your own blood pressure and the blood pressure of patients, simply to see a plant. This is now really just reminding ourselves of all the different ways that we can be in nature. Do you know this is an old English saying? Simply putting our hands in the earth probably has similar physiological effects to putting our face in water. Lowers our blood pressure, lowers our heart rate, lowers our stress levels. And if you don't have a garden, you can just grow plants. Being in nature and doing things in nature makes people happier and provides greater meaning and life satisfaction. Who walks regularly? Oh, fantastic. Who's not lying? Who resolves to walk in nature more but doesn't quite do it as often as they think they ought to? No. This is actually slightly an aside, but it's an interesting one. I read this book, Move Your DNA, Restore Your Health Through Natural Movement by Katie Bellman. It's a great book if you're interested in movement and movement science. She points out, she talks of paleo movement. And unlike paleo diet, which I think is basically totally absurd, I think paleo movement is really meaningful because this body that we have evolved to constantly move. Imagine our ancestors who, babies didn't wear nappies, they could squat differently. All day long we moved. We climbed trees, we ran, we hunted, we dug, we pounded clothes, we pounded grain, we danced. This body evolved for constant movement. And the thing about this movement is it's not linear. When you climb a tree, you move pretty much every part of your body through every possible range of movement. She says, for example, that when we walk bare feet on uneven ground, even in shoes on uneven ground, but particularly she mentions bare feet, the 33 foot bones can interact in billions of different ways. That sounds crazy, but it's just the maths she does, 33 times 32 times 31 times 30. So the bones are constantly adjusting themselves, and that effect of adjustment ripples up through the body. So you have constant, complex movements of the body. When you wear shoes and you walk on flat ground, those range of movements is reduced down to about 50. So that's her idea of natural. One example of hundreds, actually. It's one example of natural movement. And this is what people do now to exercise. They go into an urban, linear, non-Zerun environment, and they exercise in strictly controlled linear ways. Usually like this, or like this, or like this, instead of like that. So natural movement, nature. Ways of being in nature, being on our own in nature, deeply communicating. This is really important. I don't know whether you read about the benefits of community gardening. Community gardening is used so widely now for helping people with depression, with anxiety, torture survivors, post-traumatic stress disorder, the lonely. I gave a talk at a food conference in London last week, and one of the other people who talked is Ed somebody or other, I can't remember his name, you might know him. He's a Lambeth GP who has set up community gardens in GP surgeries. A lot of GP surgeries have got a little bit of a unused piece of land. So there's about 8 or 10 community gardens in GP surgeries in Lambeth where the doctors recommend patients to come, and they garden, and they experience the less isolation. They grow food, they sell the food, they eat the food. So these kinds of things are happening all over the country. There's this interesting report by Sustain and Garden Organic that community gardens benefit mental health and so on, lots of good benefits. We can be in nature with others. When was the last time you sat around a fire in nature? Sorry? 4 weeks ago? Wednesday. Anybody be?
With children
Talking about bees. You get the gold star, don't you? Don't we all love this? Do we all love this? Yeah. Just sitting around a fire. Why? It's ancestral. We're plugging into our ancestral past. Yeah. Did anybody, you know the two twins, doctors who appear on TV? So one of them seems to have slid into the background. Another one's is really revving on all cylinders. So one of the programs that I loved was him getting people off medication. And they did this, one of the things they did in this GP surgery is to get a walking group going. They went out walking every day, not just, in the park or something like that. They were diabetic. And they did it for a month. And the otherwise skeptical GPs in the surgery, when the results came in at the end of the month about people's insulin levels and blood sugar levels, they're astonished. It was much more effective than any anti-diabetic medicine. I mention that in part because we know by our study of Chinese medicine, we know so much about health and well-being. We know so much more than most doctors. Somebody comes to you with abdominal discomfort. They feel bloated. They feel uncomfortable. Yeah? They have a lot of indigestion. What would you spend time talking to them about? Diet. Not just, and diet, which part of diet would you? How they're eating, when they're eating, how much they're eating, what state of mind they're in when they're eating. Yeah? Can you imagine that there's a whole branch of medicine out there, the predominant branch of medicine, that 99% of patients will go with those symptoms, and the doctor won't even think of asking them about their eating habits. Won't even occur to them. Okay? So we hold, I've got a lot of respect for Western medicine, don't get me wrong, massive respect, and Western science, but we hold a different kind of knowledge. It's sort of deep and old and rich. And how can we offer this? So I know it's idealistic, but it would be lovely if our clinics could be centers of health, not just treatment. We complain about hospitals being places that just fix sick people. We don't want to fall into that trap ourselves. Can our clinics be places of health and well-being? With our knowledge, can we organize, create health education and things like this? Some GPs do this now. Some GP surgery do this. They organize walking groups, for example. Playing in nature. Has anybody been pond dipping recently? I went pond dipping last week. It's fantastic. I never did it when I was a kid. You know what you do? Has anybody not done it? You go to some ordinary looking pond. You scoop with a net and you empty the net out into a bowl of clear water and you look. And then I was really lucky, I've got a jeweler's loupe. Do you know what a loupe is? It's a little magnifying glass that, if you've got a ring, jeweler wants to check out whether it's a diamond or not. Okay, so you look at these creatures through the ring, and it's a miracle. You know, these tiny things you can't see, oh my God, they're wondrous. Like, for example, baby newts. Tiny newts, 3 or 4 millimeters long, are wonders of nature. So we can enrich ourselves by observing and learning from nature, loving birds, watching birds, imitating birds, touching nature. Who's got pets? God. Okay. Is there any poor soul here who doesn't go for walks? We could all turn on. Who's got cats? And dogs? No, dogs win. Okay. So you probably know, just cuddling your pet is really healthy. You know, they take dogs around hospitals. What are they called? They're called pat dogs. Yeah. A pony. The Neijing. Summer is characterized by opulence and blossoming. Go to rest late at night and rise early. Never get enough of the sun. The sun is really good for us. There is a possible increase in skin cancer. My understanding is the link between the sun and the most dangerous form of skin cancer, melanoma, is not proven. Because melanoma often appears in regions of the body that don't see the sun, like the soles of the feet, for example. It's true that less serious forms of skin cancer can be caused by burning in the sun, but the benefits of the sun are the harm caused by the sun totally outweighed by the benefits. This 20-year study of Swedish women found that those who avoided the sun were twice as likely to have died during the course of the study. So get out in the sunshine and love it, just don't get burnt. This is an interesting concept, hardiness. Hardiness is a concept in in psychology. It describes a state of resilience, of self-control, of patience, self-confidence, the belief that we can change things through our own efforts, experiencing challenges as opportunities, having curiosity and interest in the outside world. This is called hardiness. Well, I'd also call it the warrior spirit. Does anybody do martial arts? Yeah. So we do martial arts. We don't do martial arts to beat people up. We do martial arts to develop the warrior spirit. This is the warrior spirit. I thought I'd invented it. It came out of my mouth the other day. Warrior, not warrior. And then I looked it up, and of course it's a thing. So, but there's growing evidence that we can develop hardiness by being in nature, spending time in nature, particularly when we challenge ourselves in nature. Hiking, yeah? You know, that hill, you're halfway up the hill, you're sweating, you're tired, you keep going. Yeah? Gardening. Is gardening challenging? I mean, year after year, I grow my vegetables, and year after year, the slugs eat them. I mean, to me, that's probably the biggest challenge I have in my life, slugs and snails. You know, and crops don't grow, and you have failures. You need hardiness, and wilderness camping, trekking, climbing, and so on. Okay. What do we think about Chinese painting? Anybody got an opinion? Sorry? Nearly every single Chinese painting is of nature. And if you take it from a Western artist's perspective, you'd say, this is a very stagnant artistic tradition. How come people are still painting bamboo? 2,000 years after they first started painting bamboo. Why is everybody still painting cherry blossom and insects? Oh, and bamboo. Okay, what happened to this great anarchic, creative Western art tradition? Okay, any thoughts why that is? I mean, you could say it's a bit stagnant, but what can you see any? Does anybody think of the role? What happens when you go into a Chinese restaurant? What do you see on the wall? Don't you think you might see pictures like this? Yeah? You go into a Chinese home, an urban home. You see pictures like this. What did we do when I started this talk? We just looked at pictures of nature. It causes our blood pressure to drop, cortisol levels to drop. This is a different function of art. Every home will have pictures of nature, traditionally, even if you live in the midst of the city, to induce this effect and remind you of the beauty and the grandeur of the world. And I've got a book of Chinese poetry. It's mostly about nature. This is interesting. This was the Taoist 4th century precepts. You should not wantonly fell trees. You should not wantonly pick herbs and flowers. You should not throw poisonous substances into lakes, rivers, and seas. You should not dry up wet marshes. You should not disturb birds and other animals. The Neijing, Yellow Emperor's classic, said we should harmonize our lives to yin and yang. That means we should harmonize our daily life to the rising and the setting of the sun, if we want to be healthy. Yes? Staying up late, and particularly working at night, is very harmful. Living according to the sun is much more healthy. We should manage our life, cycle of our life through yin and yang, understanding that we reach maturity in the middle of our life. We enter the autumn part as we age. That it means that we start to, if we're lucky, reap the fruits of what we achieved in our maturity. And as we age further and we go into the most yin part of life, we become quiet, we become more internal, we cultivate wisdom, and we die. Don't forget that bit. But as far as the seasons are concerned, does anybody not like, who likes winter? Okay, not so many. So I used to live my life, I love spring, I love summer, autumn, well, sad because it's the end of summer, winter, oh my God, I dread it. And the way I learned to love it is through trees. Huh? Spring trees, summer trees, autumn trees, and winter trees. And particularly since I take photographs. If you go out and look at these trees as sculptures, does anybody sort of see them in that way? What a joy. Almost better. Trees are almost better in winter without leaves. So this is rare beauty. So, okay, I'm going to stop there. Thank you for bearing with me. As I said, I wasn't quite sure when it came to deciding what I was going to say. I wasn't really quite sure it was a good idea to talk about nature. I hope it's been of some benefit. At least you haven't had to write down millions of bits of information. Good.